Hello, Shashank. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, sir. Welcome to Ramayana Part 2 and
Thank you.
Unraveled Part 2 and more details and more discussions. So, how have you been today?
Yes, sir. We've been awesome so far. How about you?
Yep, good, good. And I think last week was good as well. I think we discussed really interesting topics. And yeah, I've checked I've listened to this particular discussion that we had. It was quite
Mhm.
interesting, and I thought maybe this time we would have more cool things to discuss about and share.
Let's have a free flowing conversation, I believe. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Let's go with the flow.
Yep. So we left off last time with the Vimanas, Brahmastras, and seven books, including Uttarakhand, and if it's right or wrong, we've dwelt into all of those things. And so
Hmm.
this time I thought, okay, let me just go through a few other things which are mentioned in the Ramayana, which may not
Hmm.
be commonly known. For example, in Ramayana, which is the first one, Balakanda book, right?
Hmm.
You have Sarga 37 and chapter 13 to 19 talks about
Hmm.
a formation of test tube babies. Again, the test tube baby is a modern concept. We found this in Mahabharata as well. That's how Kauravas are born, and
Yes.
Pandavas are born in a different way. Kauravas are born through similar structure, and the same thing is also mentioned here in Ramayana, where they mention about a certain uh, code-like fetal mass is put into
Hmm.
60,000 certain vessels, and those vessels are
Hmm.
filled with clarified butter and other things. And after a certain time, men are grown, babies are grown out of those things. And that was for Sagara. I think Sagara was a king who had this one at some point. Similar thing we've noticed in Mahabharata as well. And so that's one thing, because at some point we will talk about Mahabharata. Mahabharata also has really interesting things. I think that's more complex and more detailed than Ramayana as well. I think it's too many pages to cover Mahabharata.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and there would come a time we'll do it, but I think we still have a lot to discuss about Ramayana. And another interesting thing is you've made a statement last time. So before that particular stream, we had a stream where we concluded it's going to be 7,000 years roughly, 7,125 years since the last
Hmm.
time Ramayana happened. However, I understand you have a different view. Again, this is based on our assumption that we went with the evidence that we found at that point of time. However, there are evidences in the Vedic scriptures which tells a different story too. If it's a one-time event, if it's a continuous event, there are so many things. And my understanding is that you have a different point of view on those things. So, would you like to
Yes,
enlighten
sir.
us?
Definitely. So the classic belief is that Ramayana is 7,000 years old. But however, there have been geographical and archaeological studies that have proved that it might be much older than that. Um, so let's dive straight into it. The first mention in Sundarakand, where Hanuman first entered Lanka, he saw four tusked elephants guarding the palace of Ravan. Again, this is the Soneki Lanka, not in Sri Lanka, not in today's Sri Lanka. It's a different place. I'm gonna get to that in a moment. So
Okay.
Hanuman entered Ravan's Lanka, and he first saw four tusked elephants. That's where we know that it is much prehistoric than 7,000 years, because these mammals, these four tusked elephants, they existed around 10 million years to 1.6 million years ago, according to the carbon dating and all of the research that has been done into this. And this does overlap the time period of the woolly mammoth, which is extinct as of now. It recently went extinct. And these prehistoric creatures, they could not have existed just 7,000 years ago. If it was 7,000 years ago, we would have got many more fossils of them, and it would be a much recent time period. That's what I believe. And also, uh, contrary to popular belief, Ramayana states that Ravan had a Soneki Lanka. The Soneki Lanka everyone believes to be is not today's Sri Lanka, the island that is south of India, but it is actually Maldives. I know many people don't believe this to be, but there is a verse in Ramayana which says that Ravan's Lanka was 100 yojanas. That is roughly, according to today's distance scales, it is 1,213 kilometers from mainland India, and this is not the exact distance that Maldives is today, and that can be explained as well. So, Maldives today, it's the small island that we all know of as a vacation spot. But Ravana's original kingdom, it consisted of course, today's Maldives and Sri Lanka, and all the way up till the north of India, the north side of India, which is today's Nasik, which was Panchavati. And the reason why such less landmass of Maldives and Lanka is left out is because of the Ice Age. Like we stated before, Ramayana might be 1.2 million years ago. There have been ice ages that have happened as recently as 100,000 years to 200,000 years. And what happens in an ice age? Essentially, water, glaciers build up, and the entire most of the globe is covered with a thick layer of ice. And when that ice melts, there's a huge rise of sea levels in most of the parts of the globe, as in it's not completely as to the entire planet is drowned in water, but whichever land is susceptible to this kind of rise in sea level, it definitely drowns in. And that's the same case with Krishna's Dwarka as well. I'm not talking about the entire Dwarka, but most of the entire city was taken back by the rising sea levels, which corresponds to the last ice age meltdown that happened. And this is really fascinating because most of the people say that Ramayana happened 7,000 years ago, and Mahabharata, the entire Kurukshetra war, happened 5,000 years ago. And all of this just points out to the fact that it did not happen so recently. If you look at the grand time scale, it's not as recent as it seems to be, and 7,000 years ago is a really, really small time scale uh, compared to compared to the entire grand scale of the universe. So yeah,
So, is it, I'm sorry to interrupt. So, is it based on two things? One is the four tusked elephants that you mentioned, and two
mhm.
is the duration, as in the duration mentioned in the scriptures, and that is where you're getting this
There's
information from. Correct?
there are multiple other sorts of information as well. I'm gonna get to that. And also Ram Setu, which is no longer visible. I know there is a small streak of land that seems to be a bridge, but that's not the Ram Setu that was built by the entire Vanar army in order to reach Raman's Lanka, and that has vanished as well. Within this time span of 7,000 years, such a huge structure, which was built by floating rocks and it was held so strongly together, it cannot just disappear within such a small time scale. And another reason why I state that Ramayana is a prehistoric epic is because of the timeline that we have found it in, as in it might have happened, it has happened in the 24th Treta Yuga of the current Manvandar. I'm going to have to go deeper into this topic of what I mean by the
Mm-hmm.
24th Treta Yuga. But for context, we live in the 28th Kali Yuga. So there have been four Mahayugas that have passed by in order for us to be here, and four Mahayugas have passed by for Ramayana to have happened. So there's a large time scale gap that we see here. And you're going to ask me, where do I get this information from? There have been multiple studies that have been made where they see the constellation position, the star's position, which has been described in Valmiki's Ramayana, and they just correspond it to the position of the stars that we have today. So this is where, when we cross match both of these details, we get to know that Ramayana has happened in the 24th Treta Yuga, and we live in a much later time where none of the land structures hold enough um, strength to sustain themselves, and hence it has just perished. And also, there are
Wait, sorry,
some
sorry to interrupt again. So, 23rd Treta Yuga is when Ramayana happened, And we are in
24th.
28th, 24th Treta Yuga. We are in
Hmm.
28th Kali Yuga. So we're talking
Yeah,
about a difference in between, which means those many Kali Yugas have passed.
yeah, exactly. Those are
Oh,
the four Kalyogas. We're in the fourth one that has yet to pass. So yeah,
oh,
three Mahayogas have already passed by.
oh, okay. Cool, cool.
Yeah. So one more question rises with this. We all know that time is cyclical, right? The entire
Yes, sir.
cycle of time just runs by, and the yugas just repeat themselves. And you might ask the question: if there have been three Kali yugas that have been passed by, why hasn't there been an appearance of Kalki, or why hasn't there been multiple appearances of Vishnu throughout this entire period? It's a fairly valid question, and my answer to that would be that it's not necessary that Krishna or Vishnu has to appear in every single Mahayoga and he has to, um, sort of make his appearance known to man. It's not necessary that way. It can also be possible that he only appears when it is an extreme necessity for humankind, and it is absolutely necessary, as in adharma has crossed its limits and he has to appear anyhow. So
Wait, so
this
okay,
is
if you say
yeah.
if they don't have to appear in all the Mahayugas, so my
Mhm,
understanding of the four yugas is Treta Yuga, so Satya Yuga, or the first yuga, is
mhm,
where things are peaceful, and then
mhm,
Treta Yuga is when morality is held the utmost, and Dwapara
mhm,
Yuga is when we see morality depleting a bit, and Kali Yuga is when everything goes down south. So during these phases, an avatar is presented, and that avatar takes form to sort certain things out. So if you are in Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga is known to have no morals or no morality whatsoever, so does does that mean that we haven't had an avatar for Krishna or Rama avatar in the last four Mahayugas because it was not necessary? So how
no,
how
no.
are you going to add those two things though?
Yeah, so we can just relate this by saying that I do agree that Krishna had appeared 5,000 years, approximately 5,000 years ago, which is where we claim that the last Mahabharat war happened. But Ramayana is much more prehistoric than this. Let me dive deeper into that. Uh, Krishna has multiple types of avatars, as in he appears in an avatar where it is absolutely crucial for human beings to realize what dharma is and what adharma is and what the difference between those two are. And
Mhm.
according to our scriptures, it fairly points out that Mahabharat, the entire Kurukshetra war, has happened in this present Mahayuga itself. And that's why we do still see evidences of the red soil in Kurukshetra, the place where so many hundreds of thousands of soldiers bled to death. We still see that the soil is red in color, as in not the normal red soil that we people are used to see. It's as red as blood, as if the whole earth has soaked in the blood of these soldiers. And that's just one point that I'm pointing out to, that points out that the entire Mahabharata has happened in the present Mahayuga. And if you see the constellation positioning that has been presented in the Mahabharata scripture, it points out that there's not much of a change in the constellation positioning, the stars positioning, and that's how the researchers were able to point out that it has happened fairly recently. And also, many people might be confused when I say that the 24th Mahayoga, 24th Treta Yoga has happened, and the 28th Kali Yoga is where we are in. Let me dive deeper into that as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, of course. This
Yeah,
one is very curious to me, like to know more about these things. So yeah, please continue.
yeah. So, as we all know, Brahma is the entity that creates all of us, all of everything that's within the Mayavi world. Uh, we live in Maya. That's 1/4 of the entire universe. So there's two parts to this entire universe: Maya and the spiritual world. The material world is what we call Maya, and it's just one fourth of the entire part. The rest, three fourth, is the spiritual world. The spiritual world is such that it's beyond our human comprehension. Our brains are simply not meant to comprehend that kind of a space, and hence, whatever we try to do, we cannot exit this world of Maya, this material world, unless we leave our materialistic body and we surrender to Lord Krishna. So, Brahma, the entity who creates everything within the materialistic world within our universe, essentially Brahma's life is for 100 years. Again, this is not human years, this is divine years. Uh, and these 100 years are divided into 360 days and 360 nights. Let's drop the night part over here because only gonna consider the 360 days, and each day of the 360 days is called a kalpa. A kalpa is further divided into 14 manvantars. Again, these are units of measuring time. So 14 manvantars equals one kalpa, which is one day of Lord Brahma. And those 14 manvantars, each manvantar is divided into 71 mahayugs. Mahayug is a term that I mentioned earlier. Mahayug is also known as Chaturyug. Chaturyug slash Mahayug just means four yogas combined together. So each of these Mahayoga contains four yogas, and it
That's
is
the
further.
Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we do have rough time scales, human year time scales for each of these yugas. For example, Satya Yuga is 34 lakh 56,000 years, Treta Yuga is 17 lakh 28,000 years, and Dwapar Yuga is 8 lakh 64,000 years, and Kali Yuga is 4 lakh 32,000 years. Now, do keep in mind that these units of measurement, these the number of years that I've mentioned for each yuga, is it's not an exact time frame. It's not as simple as you take the time frame of Kali Yuga, which is 432,000 years. You multiply it by 2 and you get Dwapar Yuga, and you multiply it by 3, you get Treta Yuga, you multiply it by 4, you get Satya Yuga. It's not as simple as that. It all depends upon how the dictation of time goes on according to Brahma, right? So, we currently, right now, at this moment, we are in the first day of the 51st year in Brahma's life. So 50 years have passed by of our current Chaturmukha Brahma, who is the creator of this universe. 51 years is where we're at right now, and we're at the first day. And right now, the afternoon period is going on, and we're in the seventh Manvantar. And in the seventh Manvantar, we are in the 28th Mahayuga, which is the 28th Kali Yuga. And within this Kali Yuga, 5,000 years have passed by, and 5,000 years is roughly where people say that Krishna left the materialistic world and he went on to his own abode, his supreme abode. So this is how vast the entire time frame is, and to say that we have just come to this planet a few thousand years ago. Uh, According to Charles Darwin, of course, the modern human being appeared 40,000 years ago, and prehistoric dinosaurs vanished 65 million years ago. That's, in my opinion, again, you are free to have your own opinion, guys. According to my opinion, it's completely false because the time frame cannot be so little as to the extinction of an entire species, and us as human beings just appeared 40,000 years ago. Just now, like I said earlier, 1.2 million years ago is where we believe that Ramayana has happened. Of course, it's open to speculation. There's no hard and fast rule that this is the only truth. There's no one correct answer. Of course, there's one correct answer, which is getting closer to that. So,
However, just to clarify if at all any doubt, there is one of the Puranas which talks about Ramayana happened multiple times. For example, there is a story where before Lord Rama had to leave, Yama, the king of the god of death, who comes to collect Rama, and Hanuman
mhm,
stood protecting. And at this
mhm.
point, Yama couldn't get past Hanuman because Hanuman is someone who is very devoted to Lord Rama.
Yeah.
So Lord Rama takes out his ring and he puts it in the crack in the ground, and through that he asks Hanuman to get that for him. So when Hanuman shrinks in size and collects it, he goes to the Patala Loka, or is it Nagaloka? I'm not sure. And
Yeah,
he speaks with the king, and then he tells him, "Okay, pick up the ring from one of the heap of rings, same kind of rings." And then he's been told that this has happened several times, and every time Ramayana happens, and Lord Hanuman is someone who is an hindrance for Lord Yama to collect Lord Rama. So the same thing would be done, and Hanuman has been coming here constantly, and he kept on telling him the same thing as well. So in a way, it kind of foreshadows that this has been happening several times. Even though, let's just assume we have a 7,000 year or a 1.2 billion years ago, we can still somewhere understand that maybe this could have happened more than once. At least that's how the scriptures push a narrative as well. So as you said, there are no right answers or wrong answers because the scriptures itself give you multiple options.
exactly. I do completely agree with that point, and it's a really famous tale of how Hanuman shows his devotion towards Lord Ram, where he's just not ready to let him go without a fight. And yeah, you were right. Naglok, which is where the Nagas live, it is situated within the Patal Lok. It's a part of Patal Lok. And for context, people,
Sorry,
there are
sorry,
14 lokas.
sorry. Once again, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Could you explain a little bit on Nagaloka and Pataloka? Because again, I'm not fully, and this is an interesting topic. I don't think so a lot of people know about these things. So this is the first time I heard that they are actually pretty much close enough in the same place. Can you explain a bit more on those, if you don't mind?
yeah, definitely. So Nagalok is a part of Patal Lok. As you are aware, the entire system, the entire universe rests on the head of the Ananta Sheshanag, which is where Vishnu, Mahavishnu, uh, rests as well in his Yoga Nidra. So Ananta Sheshanag is on his thousand-headed serpent hood is where the entire universe rests. Upon his head are 14 lokas. Again, I'm going to explain further into this, but yeah,
Hmm.
just to name those lokas, at the topmost we have Brahmalok, which is the abode of our entire of the creator of our entire universe. And below that there is Tapalok, there is Janalok, there is Maharlok, there is Swarlok, there is Bhuvarlok, and there is Bhuloka. Bhuloka is where we are in right now. This is the dimension that we live in, the three-dimensional world that we witness all around us. This is sort of like the mid ground, the middle plane for all of these 14 lokas. Below
Are you
this,
suggesting there are 13 dimensions? That's an interesting
foot-
thought.
14 dimensions.
14 dimensions. Dang, that's an
Yeah,
interesting discussion, though. I mean, we're still trying to understand the 3D world, and you're talking about 14 dimensions. You think human mind has the capacity to phantom these things?
definitely not. There's a reason why we're trapped into this particular dimension within this material body. It's because we simply lack the capacity to explore these dimensions, which are beyond human comprehension itself altogether. And the beings that reside within these dimensions, they are not ordinary beings. They are really advanced beings, much advanced than us, advanced enough that they can perceive our three-dimensional world along with their own world, which is of multiple dimensions as well. Again, back to the point, Bhuloka, which is the mid plane, sort of the mid guard for all of the beings, and below Bhuloka, below our earth, there is Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Tala, Tala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Again, I do understand that was a bit fast, but it's just fun to say that way. Atala Loka, Vitala Loka, Sutala Loka, Talatala Loka, Mahatala Loka, Rasatala Loka, and Patala Loka being the lowest dimension, and the beings, these are known as the seven heavenly abodes and the seven hellish abodes. So again, seven
Mhm.
heavenly planets and seven hellish planets, for
Okay.
lack of better words. What my idea is, what I believe is that these lokas, they're not stacked on top of each other, but I believe that they're stacked in multiple dimensions, in 14 dimensions, wherein it sort of works as per your capacity to handle those dimensions. We, as a human being, we simply lack the capability to handle those dimensions. But like I stated earlier, there are far more advanced beings that reside in these lokas that are far more advanced than us, that are in a different tier of civilization than us. And like you stated earlier, the Nagalok is situated in Patal Lok. And when Lord Ram drops his ring within the crack within the earth, it's not as simple as he's sending the ring down the crust and the core of earth. It is more complex than that. I don't believe that it's as simple as just sending the ring down a crack. That crack was just not a simple crack within the surface of earth. It led to
Mhm.
multiple dimensions. After crossing
Like a black
Atala
hole
Vitala,
sort.
yeah, like sort of like a black hole. Yeah, spot on.
Okay.
After crossing from Bhuloka to Atala Vitala Sutala Talatala Mahatala Rasatala, it reached all the way down to Patal Loka, where the Nagas reside. Again, there's another story of Bhima where he encounters the Nagas. That's essentially where he got his entire personality of having the strength of 10,000 elephants. We can get into that later. But yeah, he enters Patal Loka and he encounters Vasuki, and Vasuki asks him why is he here, and then the entire conversation unfolds where Hanuman says that he is here to find the ring of Lord Hanuman. I'm sorry, Lord Rama, and Vasuki just points out towards the entire mountain of rings that have been accumulated over there through multiple yugas. And yes, you are absolutely right. This is time is cyclical. The one thing that we need to understand is that there's a cycle of birth and rebirth again. This is entirely dependent upon the karmas that we make, the actions that we conduct throughout our lifetime, and the entire cycle goes on no matter what. There's huge ice ages, there's a pre-period of global warming, and it's all cyclical in nature. And Ramayana has happened thousands of times, not only talking about our Mahayoga or our Manvantar. I'm talking about the multiple days that Brahma has been alive for, and the multiple 50 years that our Chaturmukha Brahma has been alive for. And it is entirely possible that within these 50 years that he has lived, each day at least has a few Ramayans that takes place within them. And like I stated earlier, each Manvantar has 71 Mahayugas. 71 Mahayugas. Just consider the possibilities that can happen. Each Ramayana having its own variation, each Ramayana having its slight own change in the storyline, slight own difference in the narrative, where um, one Ramayana might have had a different storyline wherein things turn out differently, but at the end Rama returns victorious. And in another storyline where Ravana is not as cruel as he's proposed to be, and it just goes on. It's an entire cycle by itself. And if we keep thinking about that, our minds can melt entirely together. It's such a fascinating topic that I find it.
Yeah,
And
so when you mentioned about Bhima as well, right, there is this similar concept when you mentioned that he goes to Pathala Loka and he also, because that story is slightly different. There is a crack involved, there is a lake or river involved for some reason, correct? So it talks
yeah.
about that he was pushed into water and goes. Now, the question arises like, first, how is one we talk about the crack in the ground, or let's just say there is like a black hole which it takes to a different dimension and all those things. And
Hmm.
over here we talk about water. There was a slight discrepancy. Then I just realized it. If you look at the black hole, the black hole concept which was proposed by Stephen Hawking as well, right? The term
Hmm.
which is mentioned is the event horizon has faster currents and slower currents, which means they do refer black holes as some kind of ocean or some kind of water body itself, because they call it faster current and slower current. And the example
Hmm.
they gave for one of those things as well is like, from if at all it's like black hole is Niagara Falls and you have a canoe which you're using to get to it, which by getting into it in a certain way, for example, head first or tail first, the impact can be lowered. So when I go back to the story of Bhima, when we talk about him being pushed into a water body, and that takes him to the same thing, and I come back and I see the reference for black holes also same as currents, which is again water body reference. That's
Hmm.
again an interesting discussion. Somewhere I feel, was Hinduism dumbed down in a way people can understand, but is it far more complex? We spoke about time, we spoke about other things, we spoke about black holes now as well. Do you think it's been
Mhm.
dumbed down so that it can be understood easily with simple crack or simple water?
Absolutely. I completely agree on that point. It has been dumbed down so that even children, growing children, can understand the story and understand the moral of the entire story. So, if you tell that there's an existing black hole and we can enter another dimension wherein there are serpent headed humanoid beings that are a completely different race. And they can give you immortal strength and gain strength like Bhima did. Of course, people are going to misinterpret that, and if you keep saying the same story thousands of times, of course there are going to be exaggerations of that story. Some things are going to change about the story. Of course, this before the entire uh, text was documented, there were folklores of this. So many years have passed by before the entire story of Ramayana or the Mahabharata was written, that it was all a bit of a shady, sort of a shady memory for people, and they used to just modify the story. And at some point of time, they had to dumb it down so that people can just perceive the basic reality, the basic moral of the entire story. The story of Bhima encountering the Nagas. I do agree with you on the point that he might have encountered a black hole or another doorway to another dimension. If not black hole, black hole might be an aggressive term, uh, considering that we are still talking about people who live on Earth. Black hole might be an aggressive term. Maybe it was just a doorway to another universe, or not another universe, I'm sorry, to another dimension, or a wormhole to another dimension, wherein um, he was having a fight. I believe, I'm not sure of the exact narrative. He was having a fight with his brother Duryodhana, and that's when he unfortunately fell down this hole, and he was led to the Nagas. And when he encountered the Nagas, Vasuki was the first person who spoke to him. And when he spoke to him, Bhima was unconscious. And I think there was a story of venom on him as well. He drank venom and it did not affect him. And then there was a scene where Vasuki gets impressed by him, and he offers Bhima to be able to drink how many ever pots of uh, the immortal juice. And Bhima, being the large person, the huge appetite person that he ends up drinking 10 pots of those liquid, and he ends up getting 1000 elephant strength, equal to 1000 elephant strength from each of those pots. So that was the speciality of that, and that's the story of how he ended up getting the strength of 10,000 elephants. And that basically made him a formidable force to be reckoned with within the Mahabharata war against the Kauravas. So I believe that's how the story goes.
Got it. So yeah, back to Ramayana. Yeah, so I think, yeah, Mahabharata. I think that we need to have more detailed discussion on it. There will come a time
Yeah,
for us to do that. Yeah, we can go back to Ramayana. I think that was more quite interesting
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, so we were discussing about the Lokas and the entire time frame that this happened, and the cyclical nature of time that we live in. My question is, are we the first generation in 28 Kali Yugas who have brought our entire planet to such a brink of destruction, or have there been other species, other, I'm sorry, not species, other, yeah, species possibly, there might have been other intelligent species at the top of their respective food chains who have brought about such a vast destruction upon this entire planet. I'm not even mentioning the so fact that global warming is a main concern here, because global warming was supposed to happen. Even if humans never existed, global warming is a part of nature's way of heating the planet and then again taking it back to the ice age and then again heating the planet. This goes on. We're just a catalyst that's encouraging this global warming, and we're encouraging it to take place in a much faster rate. Yeah, my question is that are we the first generation to have ruined our planet in such a way that we're taking it to a point of no return, wherein the earth might be permanently damaged. What do you think of that?
So I'll go with the scriptures. The scriptures say that there are four yugas, and it's a process again, as you mentioned. These things are meant to happen. So post the
Hmm.
first yuga, the second yuga should happen. Post the second yuga, the third yuga should happen, and post the third yuga, the fourth yuga, and then it comes to an
Hmm.
end, and then it starts over again. As there's also
Hmm.
another scripture which goes on saying that how Brahma also dies. By the way, as you mentioned, 100 years,
Yeah.
how much Brahma lives, right? So how
Hmm.
long Brahma lives? Sorry. So once what happens over here is when Lord Brahma, when he more like Lord Vishnu, sorry, when Lord Vishnu uh, breathes in, the
Hmm.
planets, the universes are destroyed. When Lord Vishnu breathes out, is when
Hmm.
creation takes place. That's the concept, according to Hinduism, right? And every time he
Yeah.
breathes out, there is Brahma which is created, and Brahma creates. There are multiple universes coming in place, and multiple universes have multiple Brahmas. Sorry, they have each individual Brahmas, and those Brahmas start the creation of mankind, other planets, and whatnot. So in a way, again, we're talking about the big bang concept over here, like Vishnu
Hmm.
breathing in and breathing out talks about the specific idea where planets are like, how a star dies and how a new planet comes to place is a very similar concept, right? A star
Yeah.
dies and it then compresses completely, and then once it reaches singularity, it expands, and then new universe comes to place. Similar concepts you can agree over here. So in this way, where it says that these things are meant to happen, the process is ongoing, which means irrespective of how things have or would have worked out, the planets would come to an end, as an Earth would come to an end based on the scriptures.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
is meant to happen, and even if you try to delay it, again, there is a possibility that it could be delayed here or there, but it is meant to
Hmm.
happen. That is my
Exactly. Exactly. That's a cycle of life and death, of creation and destruction. Ultimately, what has started has to end, and I do completely agree with that point. And also, you mentioned um, Vishnu, Mahavishnu. Let me just break that down a little bit for people who might not have a lot of context on that. So, Mahavishnu is the supreme soul. Mahavishnu is where the entire creation starts. He is Anadi and Anant, basically meaning that he does not have a birth and a death. He is without a beginning, he is without an end. And there are further classifications. There is Garbhodaksha Vishnu, which is who is an expansion of Mahavishnu, and there is also Kshirodaksha Vishnu, wherein Kshirodaksha Vishnu is the Paramatma of each and every universe that we live in. Like you mentioned, when Mahavishnu takes a breath of air in, as in it's not particularly breathing in. I'm just dumbing it down so that people can understand. With each breath of air that he inhales,
Mhm.
multiple universes just go back into his pores. Countless universes are destroyed, and that comes to an end. Each time he exhales, countless universes just pop out of his pores. That little holes that we have in our skin that we call pores. Countless universes just pop out of each and every pore of his body, and within each of those universes, there is a Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and an expansion of that would be Kshirodaksha Vishnu, which resides at the center of each and every universe. And out of the navel of Vishnu comes out Brahma, and Brahma is the one who essentially lays down the architecture, the infrastructure for the entire universe, and he just creates everything. So essentially, Mahavishnu is the center of creation for everything that we have around. And I'm only talking about the spirit, the material world that we live in, which comprises one fourth of the total universe that exists. There's also the three-fourth part that I'm not talking about, which is the spiritual world. The spiritual
Mhm.
world essentially, it is beyond our own comprehension. It is beyond what we can perceive as a normal human mind. After all, we can only imagine so much, to a point where even the concept of time and space becomes vague. In that spiritual world, there's no concept of time or space or matter in that spiritual world. It's only something that exists within the Maya world, which is the material world. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the cycle of creation and destruction has to go on. Even if we as a species did not exist, the earth would still exist, it would still carry on, and ice ages would happen, global warming would happen, the ice caps would melt, the sea levels would rise, and it's just nature being nature, right? On that angle, would you be okay if I just explain a little bit more about this entire cycle of creation and destruction through evolution, as to how the evolution has happened and how Vishnu taking avatars on planet Earth? I'm just talking about the Dashavatars.
The
Do
Shatas.
know that,
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
Do know that there are more than 41 avatars of Vishnu that have taken place so far, but mainly to establish dharma against adharma and to abolish adharma. There have been the Dashavatar. There have been other avatars as well for different purposes. But let's keep our focus on evolution. My whole idea about explaining this would be to use Charles Darwin theory of evolution and just relate
Mhm.
it to how Dashavatar has progressed throughout the entire Mahayuga period, and how it has come by, and how it represents what Charles Darwin came up with.
So,
So
out of
yeah.
all the avatars of Lord Vishnu, right,
Mhm.
The Dashavatara concept is prominent, especially
Yeah,
those 10 avatars which we're talking about, right, which you would be explaining in some time, seems to have
yeah.
more importance because they
Mhm.
serve a bigger, a different purpose than the other avatars as well, right?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, these avatars especially came in to uphold dharma, which again,
Hmm.
the entire concept of Hinduism is all about righteousness and dharma to begin with. So
Yeah.
these avatars are specifically only to uphold dharma, which is exactly what Krishna says as well in Bhagavad Gita, where whenever there is rise of a dharma, I would come
Hmm.
here and then I would restore dharma, right?
Yeah.
Famous
The whole,
dialogue.
yeah, the whole shloka of yada yada hi
Yeah,
dharmasya
that is
glanar
dharma, yeah.
bhavati bharata. Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorites. I almost like it, but I couldn't pronounce the words. If you could say it out, it'd be nice because I couldn't pronounce all the words. We never had formal teachings on those pronunciation though. If you want to say those,
Yeah.
it'd be nice.
Yeah. So it just goes like yada yada hi dharmasya glanar bhavati bharata. And I just forgot the other part of the shloka.
Atyutmana dharmasya something. I don't know if the first one though.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a second. Let me just remember that. I think it goes something like yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam. Oh, there you go. I remember that.
Right. Oh, you forgot the continuation. Paritranaya sadhunam.
Yeah, I forgot about that part, and then I just recalled it in my mind. I was able to get the whole thing.
You can't complete that without the second half though. There's no, you don't start with this one or you don't end with the first half. It has to be both
Yeah,
those courses.
that's why I tried so hard. Yeah, so it goes like yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam. So that's the entire shloka. That just signifies, that just tells that whenever there is, just to dumb it down so that people can understand, it just goes to say that whenever the quantity, the volume of adharma rises beyond a certain point, beyond a tipping point, Vishnu is gonna take an avatar on our Bhuloka. Again, I'm notice that I'm not saying Earth, I'm saying Bhuloka, in this
Bhuloka.
specific dimension. Yeah, the three-dimensional world that we live in. He is gonna take an avatar in this dimension, and he's gonna abolish that particular adharma, the source of adharma altogether. He just plucks it out by the root. So yeah, that's the entire concept behind that shloka.
Nice. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think, someday Bhagavad Gita is also in place. Yeah, but we will get to Ramayana first before I jump the gun to Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata.
Yes,
But yeah,
definitely.
interesting one too.
Yeah. So let's continue with the whole angle of Charles Darwin relating with Dashavatar, uh, the whole Dashavatar narrative.
Yes, sir.
So, as you know, there has to be a starting point to every civilization. Um, there has to be some point where it started. We are not Anadi and Ananta. We do take birth and we get abolished, we get destroyed. So, uh, Charles Darwin says that the entire source of life just began with sea life, with water life. To uphold that point, we have the first avatar of Vishnu, which is the Matsya avatar. Now, Matsya avatar is a giant fish, a giant water being that came into existence, and Vishnu was the being who took an avatar of Matsya. And we all know the famous story of Manu, the first human being who ever walked the face of Earth, and he was the one who led the entire species on the boat that was taken afar by the ocean by Lord Vishnu. Again, this was to protect the entire human species, the entire whatever was living on planet Earth. I'm sorry, on Bhuloka at that time. Vishnu's main aim was to protect life around it. So
Question:
yeah, that's the
does it
yeah.
specifically talk about other life forms as well? Because the story is very similar to Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark talks about two species, not two species, multiple species with two identities or two individuals of same species would be carried on that particular boat, where along with Noah and his family to continue
Mhm.
with the uh, life forms. To my understanding, I don't know if similar concept is mentioned in the Matya. Because to my understanding, there were a couple of human beings on that boat. I don't know about other living beings which were included. Can you shed some light on that if you know anything?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when Matsya Avatar first appeared, Manu was already existent, and there were multiple other life forms that were already pre-existing on Bhuloka. And the whole idea was to save most of what they can. Again, this included Saptarishis. There's a specific mention of the Saptarishis that were saved with that flood, pralaya, if you will. That's the norm for that. So the Saptarishis were mentioned as a part of the beings who were saved. The Saptarishis were crucial at this point because when and Manu and the other species climbed on that boat, there were no other people who could really guide human civilization further with all the knowledge that they had. And this is why the Saptarishis were so important and so crucial that they were made the first preference to be saved, because the Saptarishis act as a guide for the entire civilization. Because think of how difficult it would be if every time that a civilization has to hit the restart button, they have to gather all of the knowledge that have accumulated so far, and they would have to start from scratch for that. That would be quite impractical and quite time consuming, if you will. And that's the reason why the Saptarishis were so crucial at this point. And there's not just one story. The Genesis story that you mentioned of Noah's Ark, that's just one story that is similar to the story of Manu. There's also the story of Gilgamesh, where the great flood happened. Again, this is Greek mythology that I'm talking about. The Greek mythology has a similar story of the great floods, and
Mhm.
the Christianity has an angle of that as well, and I believe Islam has an angle as well, if I'm not wrong. Does it?
I don't know precisely if there is a flow, because again Christianity is again Abrahamic. So Islam is again Abrahamic religion, which means they follow from Adam till the last prophet, which is Prophet Muhammad, right? Which means they agreed
Mhm.
to Moses, they agreed to Noah, and all of them become uh, the prophets, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also Manu was not the only human being that was on the boat. It was also his accompanied by his partner. I think it was. Wait, hold on. What was her name?
I
Shatarupa.
think Brahmi was his wife, right? Brahmi.
No, no, Manu and Shatarupa. Manu and Shatarupa were the ones. Yeah,
Okay.
Shatarupa. Correct.
So Manu was the son of Surya, and also who was the grandson of Brahma, correct? Or is it the son of
Exactly.
Brahma?
I believe it's a son of Brahma.
Because if
He
you
was
go
a.
back to the Ramayana, right? So
Mhm,
Surya Vamsa starts from Manu, and the
mhm.
father of Surya Vamsa is Surya, son. So I'm
Yeah, I
guessing
believe
Manu
there are
must have been
multiple.
grandson.
I believe there are multiple variations to this. Some places there's a mention of Manu being the direct son of Brahma, and some places there's a mention of him being a descendant of Surya Dev.
Correct. So when I was looking into one of those, the book of Mahagathas, I found out that Manu was a son of Brahma, created from
Mm-hmm,
Brahma. Man and woman both came released, and the first pair was named Manu, and the woman was Brahmi. And since
mm-hmm,
Maithuna, the copulation, was the method of sustaining life, they called it Maithuna Shrishti. That's the first version of the story, which goes and saying Manu was the son of Brahma. Hence, the term Manusha or Manava comes from,
mm-hmm,
because we are from Manu. However, if I'm looking at the other version of it, it says in the again look at the Ramayana version of it. It talks about you know Surya, who's again son of Brahma, and Surya's son is Vivastava or Vaivastava or Manu, and then he becomes a
mm-hmm.
grandson. So,
I see. Yeah, there's another name for Shatarupa. In some scriptures, I think it's mentioned as Ananti, Manu
okay.
and Ananti as well. And also, yeah, Vaivasvata is another name of Manu, I believe. But yeah, there have been variations of this. Multiple places it is mentioned as Manu as the first human being, and Ananti as his partner. And in other places, there's also mention of Vaivasvata, the name Vaivasvata, and Shatarpa. So yeah, there's multiple angles to this.
I think it's just the alias, because if I remember in Ramayana, even Lord Rama is called as Rama, Kakusta, Vaivastava. They address him with different names as well, right? And same thing,
Yeah.
same names are given to him as Father Shraddha at some point as well, which means we're talking about the originators. If that is, we all agree that Manu was the first person. Even though the stories say who the grandfather or father is, the stories all say one thing, which Manu was the first human. So which
Mm-hmm.
means and he also has another name, which was, as you mentioned, Vaivastava is another name for Manu, just like you have two names, an alternate name, and that's the way
Yeah.
them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some people might agree that it's not Shatarupa, it's Ananti, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's multiple names in multiple places.
Correct. Could be a
So
different name given to them, yeah. Because
yeah,
those are traits which we find them in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Because even in Bhagavad Gita, the way
hmm,
Krishna addresses Arjuna is not just oh Arjuna. He talks about oh Kauntilya, oh
hmm,
the way you see them, both of them exchanging names, right? There will be different names
yeah,
which addresses as well. Oh Parantama,
Dana,
oh Keshava. That's how they,
Dhananjaya,
right?
yeah,
Exactly.
Dhananjaya,
So yeah, so I
Partha,
think there's just names which are given out of love, and yeah, those names are used here to address them. But in a sense, they're the same.
yeah. So yeah, that's the first avatar of Vishnu, which is the Matsya avatar, depicting how life originated from the seas, from water life. And also Charles Darwin says the same thing, where life first originated in the waters, and then it gradually came to land. Moving on to the next avatar, which is the Kurma avatar. The Kurma avatar, Kurma in this case means the tortoise. Either one. There have been multiple variations, whether it's a turtle or a tortoise, but I believe it to be tortoise. The tortoise being an amphibian where it can live both on land and on water,
Hmm.
and this really signifies how similar Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is to us, wherein from sea life we moved on to the amphibian life, wherein beings were able to live both underwater and on the land. And Kurma Avatar, famous for the Samudra Manthan that has happened, with wherein the Mount Meru. Mount Meru is basically the landmass which upholds the entire 14 lokas that I discussed about earlier. I forgot to mention this. Mount Meru is basically like a pillar in the middle which upholds the entire system together. So the amphibian life, the Kurma avatar, that took place. And then next comes the Varaha avatar. Varaha, in this case, means um, the land animal, the early mammal. I think it's a pig, but in most of the places, I don't think that it's a pig.
Yeah, it's a boar is how they would depict it.
Yeah,
Not a, yeah,
yeah.
it's a boar is how
So
they
sorry for
depict
that. Yeah, so sorry for that. Yeah, it's a
it.
boar.
No problem.
Yeah, it's a boar with two tusks, which upholds our entire planet of Earth when the brother of Hiranyakashipu tried to basically just um, imprisonate Mother Earth, and that's where Vara Avatar came in, and that signifies the early mammal. And Charles Darwin as well. The next stage to amphibian life is the early mammal, and then comes Narasimha. Narasimha, a special one, because it's half human and half lion, and this is sort of like a crossroads where Charles Darwin does not have anything on this, but we do have the Narasimha avatar, wherein it signifies the unison between two species, wherein it's half of a human being and half of a lion. And I think that's something that's unique to our culture. And they have in other cultures wherein they depict a person who's having the upper body of a human being and the lower body of a horse. And yeah, there have been Greek culture. There's the Greek culture and the Mesopotamian culture as well, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, yeah, don't quote me on that.
So
There
it's
have
like
been
Hayagriva, one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu as well, right?
yeah, exactly. Hygriva is also one of the avatars. Um, is it a horse face?
Horse, yes, sir.
Yeah,
A horse
uh,
face and a human body. Like say Panchamukhya Hanuman, has a
yeah,
similar, structure as well.
exactly. Yeah, so that's I think something that's different from Charles Darwin said that theory of evolution. And then next comes the Vaman avatar. Vaman avatar is the first human avatar that has been described in this, according to the timeline, of course. That's the first primitive human that appears after Narasimha. And
Mm-hmm.
Vaman avatar is sort of like a dwarf. Vaman is a dwarf, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a brahmachari that appears at the time of King Bali. And there's the whole story of where Vaman acquires the entire earth in his first step, and the entire skies in the next step, and the entire Patal Lok in his third step. I'm sorry, and in the third step, he asks Bali where he can put his feet in. And while witnessing this entire glory of the Vaman avatar, Bali just gets humbled and he tells him that he can put his third feet on his head. And that's how Bali just goes towards below the earth. And every every so often, Bali comes around planet Earth and he visits his disciples. And this is the entire lore of how Bali became such a great humbled person. He was sort of like the arrogant king that you would expect, but he was also a good person at his time. So yeah, that describes the primitive human, the Homo erectus, the primitive Homo erectus, according to Charles Darwin. And
Mm-hmm.
next comes Parshuram. Parshuram being the forest dweller. Parashu meaning Parshuram, he is a person who lives in the forest. He carries an axe with him, and that really does have a lot of similarities with the hunter-gatherers theory that Charles Darwin proposed, wherein Homo erectus evolved and they started building tribes and communities, and they started living in forests. And for food, they used to roam around, and they used to never settle in one place. And that sort of signifies how Parshuram is. He is a forest dweller. He's a person who lives in the forest. And when times got tough, when Adharma uh, had crossed its limit, he ended up destroying multiple generations of Kshatriyas at his
Kshatriya,
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
So he
Kartavirya.
was a Kshatriya himself as well, right? Was he a Brahmana Kshatriya, or how was he just a Kshatriya, Parashurama?
Yeah, that's kind of a different narrative here. So, Parshuram, basically, he was a kshatriya, a brahman having the nature of a kshatriya. His father, um, his father had two wives, and there's this entire narrative about how Parshuram was born. And his father, he had two wives, and both of these wives, he wanted a Kshatriya from one wife and a Brahman from another wife. So let me just, I
I think
forgot
I
the name
remember
of.
the story though, where the wives would exchange
Yeah,
the religious, not religious, a ritual porridge of some kind, and they would exchange it, and then the babies are born in different wombs, and the nature must
yeah,
change or something of that sort, right?
yeah. I'm trying to remember his father's name. I think it was Jamadagni, right?
I am not fully sure. I know
Yes.
he was one of reputed rishis though.
Yeah, Jamadagni, exactly. That's what I was trying to recall. So his father Jamadagni, his one wife was a Kshatriya and his other wife was a Brahmin, and he
Mhm.
wanted respective babies out of those wives. So he that's what he desired. So what he did was he designed potions with specific qualities in them, and those two wives were supposed to drink those potions. And what they did was essentially they ended up exchanging the pots, and so there was one baby who was born in a Kshatriya's body with the qualities of a Brahman, and there was another baby which was born as a Brahman with the qualities of a Kshatriya. The Brahman being born with the qualities of Kshatriya being Parshuram, and
Mhm.
his brother, I think his brother was, what was his brother's name?
Let me look for it as well, though. I forgot the which. I read one of the stories from the Puranas. I don't know which one actually. And this is post Mohini Avatar, right?
Yeah, post Mohini Avatar.
Post Mohini Avatar before Lord Rama's Avatar. But I think we can we'll look for it at some point. I'll check for it though.
Yeah, sure. So that's how the entire narrative of Parshuram goes, wherein he's essentially a Brahmin with the qualities of a Kshatriya, and hence he was such a great practitioner of the arts, of whatever practice that he was conducting at that time. He was an expert at that, and he had tremendous knowledge
I think I found it. Sorry to
ah,
interrupt. So yeah,
yeah,
father's name is Jamadagni, as you mentioned. Yes, and the story goes as the fierce sons are looking for sanctuary and stuff, and the wife's name is Renu. One wife's name is Renuka. Another one's name would be okay. So as he goes on, the four of them. Yeah, so I think the first one was named Rama, who happens to be
mhm,
Parshurama,
yeah.
and the second one's name is no, I think Brahma. Okay, hold on,
He's
Brahma
a great
Kshatriya.
sage. Yeah,
Uh,
his
I don't.
brother is a great sage.
Okay, I think I should probably do uh, more research on that. I guess though.
Yeah. So,
Sorry,
anyways,
continue. I'll just look for it. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, so that's the entire narrative of Parshuram, wherein he just lost his temper when Kartivirya Arjun was just going around and conducting adharma everywhere he goes, and that's where he lost his temper when Parshuram's father was killed at the hands of Kartivirya Arjun, and at that time when he snapped, he just went on a rampant streak, killing streak, and he ended up the lore is that ended up destroying 21 generations of Kshatriyas that were supposed to conduct a dharma at that time. But I don't believe that to be true. I don't think that it was 21 generations that were killed. I believe it was 21 kings and the armies that he encountered that he killed at that time. And that's how the entire forest dweller, Parshuram, the ultimate forest dweller, his narrative goes. And
Correct. So
next,
maybe they're referring to 21 generation lines there that he destroyed. Because if you take post that, Parshurama does appear during the time of Lord Rama, but his
mhm,
father was also Kshatriya who was not killed. So he only killed the ones which were committing adharma and
yeah,
all the other
yeah,
Kshatriya
I
lines.
think.
So with 21 generations or 21 lines that he destroyed, but he left the ones
Mhm.
with righteousness in place.
Exactly. And that's a funny thing. Funny you should mention Parshurama in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Uh,
Mhm.
Parshurama being a Chiranjeevi that he is, Chiranjeevi essentially means that he is an immortal up to a certain extent. Uh, Parshurama being the immortal Chiranjeevi that he is, he appears in both Ramayana and Mahabharata, and he's also said to be in Kalki Puran, of course. He's said to be the
Mhm.
guru of Kalki, the next avatar that Vishnu is going to take place, hopefully in this Mahayuga itself. So he is an avatar of Vishnu, of Krishna, Vishnu, both of them the same entity. He is an avatar which encounters another avatar. That's that really signifies the point wherein these sentient beings, these avatars, can really encounter each other. Of course, Parshuram knew that Rama was an incarnate of Vishnu, Mahavishnu. He was an incarnate of him, and but the thing is that Rama did not really know that Parshurama is an avatar of Vishnu. Of course, they both did not acknowledge each other. Parshuram knew about this, but Rama did not have particular knowledge about this. So, moving on.
Just wanted to
Next.
mention this one thing, right? Because when you said that Parashurama and Rama met, or the same thing when they meet during the Kali Yuga, it reminds me
Mhm.
of the Spider-Man meme, right? The Spider-Man's pointing at each other. Like we are like avatars,
Exactly.
and then, like you are me, like I am you.
Each of them pointing at each other, saying that they're an avatar of each other.
Because
Yeah.
when you mention about Lord Rama meeting Parashurama, right? Okay, that
Mhm.
entire narration in Valmiki Ramayana is somewhat bone chilling. I don't know. So when I read this for the first time, I think this is somewhere
Mhm.
in I think again Balakanda, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, it's in Saga 75, right? So it talks
Mhm.
about this. He has another name called Jamandignya or something else. I couldn't pronounce the name correctly. Sorry about that. But yeah, so when he mentioned about, he says how the sky goes dark, how the birds and animals react in a way. And when Parshuram appears, the sense, or the way at least is narrated over here, is the entire forest takes a very dark position, and the
Mhm.
soldiers, everyone faint except
Oh.
for Lord Rama and Dashrath. Everyone else is faint. They're fainted though. They're not in their senses when Parshuram appears, right? Because there's another reason over here is, if in case he has to appear and he sees anyone who may react
Mhm.
due to them, think the soldiers may think that he is not Parshuram or someone else. If they accidentally react, then he has to retaliate, because him being the person who was born to be destroying Kshatriyas.
Yeah.
So that was the way they're saying. When as soon as he appeared, the entire forest went dark, and except for King Dashratha and Lord Rama, everyone else were fainted. That's an interesting way. And when I read this, then I think it was giving me so much like, okay, this is like like a evil villain entry. So they started out though, but then and then how they ended it was one of the best things.
Mhm.
Again, it's like a best 12 actors which came in, and then both of them are superstars in the movie. That's how they ended it
Mhm.
as well. Interactions. It was really interesting when I read that.
And yeah, funny you should mention about Parshuram appearing. So Parshuram, as we know, he's a Chiranjeevi, like I mentioned earlier. He still lives towards this state, as in he's still alive as of now, and he lives in a place called Mahendragiri Peak. It's a little place in the north of India, around in and around the Himalayas, wherein these beings, Parshurama and Lord Hanuman and the other Chiranjeevis, they have spent so much time hiding themselves in plain sight that it's almost impossible to spot them now. And of course, there have been instances where some people claim to have uh, encountered them at some point of time, but it's not really so easy, right? To encounter Parshuram or Lord Hanuman, the supreme devotee of Lord Rama. But
Hmm.
yeah, there have been there's a belief that these people still roam the earth today itself, if not confined to one place. But yeah, they're surely alive to this day as well. And even Hanuman, he lives in somewhere in the north of the Himalayas, in and around a remote village near Nepal, within the
Hmm.
mountain ranges. So that's a popular belief where he lives now.
I like the idea of both these avatars are on the planet, and the same thing goes as long as the Kali Yuga is there, they would still be there. Post Kali Yuga, they would end, and then the entire thing would start. So until Kali Yuga, they would be there. That's why people also say that the reason why Hanuman is the best god to fight against evil than any other god is because he's in this plane, so he tends to act more quickly. So there is in Hanuman Charisa there's a saying, Bhut Pisacha Nikata Nahi Avai, Mahabhira Jabanama Sunavai. So the
Yeah.
term Mahabhir is mentioned, no evil would come close to you. And I was watching this video. I think this person who sang this Bajrang Bang song, right? Bajrang Bang
Mhm,
song. I forgot his
mhm,
name, or Rishi something. Right? So he says that since Hanuman is in the same plane,
mhm.
his he reacts to things quicker, which is why he's worshipped most in terms of evil spirit and warding off those kind of things. So that's one thing. And second, again, Hanuman also appears in Mahabharata as well in two different occasions. One to teach Bhima a lesson, and Krishna
Mhm.
again teaches Hanuman a lesson in a way, like saying that I too can show that your pride is also kind of more. And then Hanuman also showing up on the the final war as well, where he protects. There's another cultural significance I think that we can discuss later post the
Mhm.
avatars. If I want to discuss this cultural significance, why we have Hanuman stickers or photos on our vehicles. That's an interesting
Yeah,
one though. But
yeah.
since we're on top of Parashurama, I just wanted to mention one more thing about Parashurama.
Mhm,
In Ramayana, this is what it says, right? Lord Parashurama and Lord Rama had a battle, and Lord
mhm,
Rama defeated Lord Parashurama.
mhm. Yes, sir.
And,
That is
and that's
completely
an
true.
interesting one. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry.
Oh yeah,
No, no.
go
I
ahead,
think
go ahead.
that's an interesting one, as I was saying. Like Lord Rama defeated Lord Parashurama, who's the master of weapons and arts.
Yeah, that's really the entire how the entire story goes. Rama proves his worth that he is the one who's supposed to wield Shivji's Dhanush, and
Hmm.
that's where Parshurama knows that he can rest for a while now, knowing that Ram Rajya, the entire place where adharma cannot happen, it's in good hands right now. That's it's kind of like a relief to him, wherein he knows that it's in good hands right now, and
Hmm.
he sort of like relaxes. And all of these Chiranjeevis still roam the earth, may it be Ashwatthama or King Bali, or it may be Vyasa Rishi or Hanuman, or it might be Vibhishan. Vibhishan is also Chiranjeevi, by the way, or
Vyasa,
Kripacharya. Yeah,
Kripacharya. Yep, yep.
Kripacharya or Parashurama for that instance. And there's one more, I think. Yeah, it's Markandeya. Markandeya Rishi. He's
Okay,
also one
yep.
of the. Yeah, he's also one
He's the
of
one who
the
got the
Chiranjeevi.
blessings from Lord Shiva, right? The first human to get the Markandeya, Sanjeevani Markandeya mantra.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's the one. So yeah, all of these beings still roam the earth, but they're so exceptionally good at hiding that they'll never be found unless they want to be found by someone. And as per the Kalki Puran, all of these Chiranjeevis are gonna come together in order to face Kalki, in order to face Kali. I'm sorry, and help Kalki in his battle against the greatest evil that is gonna take place within the Kali Yuga. So yeah, just waiting for this entire thing to unravel. Of course, we're gonna be long gone by then. And also one more theory that I had. I'm gonna get to that by the end of this.
Yes,
So,
sir.
yeah, going back to the Dashavatar, Rama, after Parashurama, it's Rama's avatar who takes birth on Bhuloka, and
Hmm.
Rama, famously known as the Maryada Purushottam, he's in a world
Hmm.
full of there's a little bit of dharma, but there's much more dharma wherein people are believing in God, and there was, of course, the Ram Rajya that went for a whole lot of years. He's still in a world where dharma exists in a prominent form. There's not many people who are following a dharma. But then next comes Krishna, wherein he is a king in a world full of adharma, wherein your own family members go ahead and cheat you, your own family members are willing to insult you and go towards the point of war, just to make a point that they are superior, just to show that they are not weak, and he lives in that sort of a world. and that just shows you the evolution of civilization. And next comes Buddha. Of course, there's a lot of controversy and debate upon when,
Oh
upon,
yeah, and
yeah,
this is
upon
one interesting thing we have to discuss. I guess the ninth avatar, who's
yeah. So, there's a lot of debate as to if Buddha is really an avatar of Shri Vishnu, or is he just another propaganda that has been included within the Dashavatar by people in order to just show their supremacy in Vaishnavism. So, Buddha being the enlightened soul, for the sake of argument, let's just consider him as an avatar of Vishnu. Of course, there can be difference of opinion. People can have different opinions on this. Let's just put across ours. Let's consider Buddha as an avatar of Vishnu. He is the enlightened soul, the person who attained moksha by means of devotion, by preaching other people what the right path is, by preaching ahimsa, by preaching many parts of life and how to navigate through life. And he also preaches. His teachings are still famous to this day. Buddhism is a really popular religion. So Buddha being the enlightened soul. So we came all the way from Matsya Avatar, Kurma Avatar, Kurma Avatar, the amphibian life, the early mammal, Varaha Avatar, the boar, and Narasimha, the half animal and half human, and Vaman Avatar, the human dwarf, the primitive human dwarf, and Parshuram, the forest dweller, and Rama, the Maryada Purushottam in a world with Dharma as the primary aspect, and Krishna, a king, a supreme being in a world full of adharma. And then we come to Buddha, who is an enlightened soul. So you can just see the entire evolution that has taken place of being from water all the way towards an enlightened soul. And next comes Kalki Avatar. Kalki Avatar, of course, everyone knows that it's going to be in a really advanced civilization where science almost seems like magic. The science is going to be so advanced that it almost seems like magic. What my argument is, since we saw that Buddha is an enlightened soul, Kalki might be a further and a more advanced version of that. You know, it might it might not even take place in this dimension at all. It might take place in another dimension where Kalki, along with the Chiranjeevis and everyone who accompanies him, they
you're
fight in an.
teasing me with the Terminator story. At this point, I feel like maybe this is when Terminator happens. I guess though, like like
Exactly.
that's how far I'm going actually at this point. You know, it almost Skynet and Kalki like an AI. You know, so something goes wrong, and then when you talk about future, there's something like a revelation of sort. And then when you mention Kalki, and this is yeah, that's definitely Terminator for me though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be close to that idea. I do think that it might be entirely possible wherein AI is a part of the entire war against other with Adharma, and Kalki Avatar being the sole person who stands against Adharma and he fights them. But we really have to consider the point that Parshuram is going to be the guru for Kalki, and he's going to train Kalki to battle to be able to battle with Kali. So yeah, there's multiple angles to this. Of course, we don't know yet because it hasn't happened yet, and I'm surprised that it has not happened before this Mahayuga, so that we can just refer to scriptures. Of course, there's the Kalki Puran, but I was not able to get much of a grasp on that. So yeah, the only answer is to wait for this, I guess.
So it's funny because just to be honest, even though I kind of joked about the Terminator thing, if you look at Kalki Avatar, right, I
Mhm,
don't see there might be a relevance to human per se. Maybe
mhm,
Kalki Avatar is more of the avatar that closes shop. Like okay, we've started all of these things, which so this is how it's going to end, and I'm just going to come here and close everything up and move on for the next world. There's someone who just comes and finish it off. I don't even
mhm,
see because where else can humans go pose that? I'm only thing you can look about here is cybernetics, humans, or any kind of genetic augmentation of sort, right? I know it's
mhm.
kind of far fetched, but that's pretty much where we can go, like some cyberpunk kind of stuff which you can go through. So there is nothing much I could think of in the future, because if you're talking about enlightenment, I think Buddha has achieved more or
Yeah.
less what one can finally achieve. In a way, if you have to
Yeah.
put Buddha there, he has done it. I think that's end of everything now. So if Kalki is going to be here, it's only to close shop and say, everyone, it's time, everyone pack up, it's time for you to leave. That's where I see Kalki Avatar though. I think, for example, Buddha as well. So we mentioned about the avatars of Vishnu. Buddha is
Hmm.
one avatar which we can say. There's also people believe Balrama is another avatar
Yeah.
who was born along with Lord Krishna. So he could
Hmm.
also be the ninth avatar. And another popular one, some people believe it. Maybe it's far-fetched idea, but again, in a way, it kind of makes sense. Maybe Jesus could be one of those avatars as well, because if you look at the story of Jesus, it's very similar, right? If you go back to the Christianity, it says that there were times when the Jews were, going through a trouble. The Canaanites were going crazy. Something of that sort happens, and again, there was rise of adharma. So
Hmm.
they too believe in a triune concept where God, Son, and Holy Spirit do exist, and the Father takes a form as human, as in the concept of incarnation or avatar is different, where the Father takes a form as a human, and that human is Jesus, and Jesus would teach good things, and then he would die for us. And it's pretty much how Krishna ends his life once dharma was upheld, and then he died, right? In a similar way, Jesus' story
Yeah.
also falls in a similar, and his birth also is similar, because if you look at the birth of the Pandavas, a divine birth without any physical, remember we had this discussion, the physical
Yeah.
intervention
Test you.
is not required, yeah. And the same way is
Yeah.
how Jesus was born as well. So stories also mix, and the concept of Noah's Ark and all of those also align. In a way, maybe Jesus could also, because everything about Jesus Christ screams of an avatar more than anything
Yeah.
else. To me, that's how I see it, at least. Though, but again, this is just me trying to patch things together to make better sense of it. But again, the ninth avatar is still pending for some reason. People are not finalizing it for some reason, which means I can add one here as well until someone wants to
Yeah.
move it.
Until it's official, I think we can present our opinions and we can speculate all we want. And also one more angle to this. Uh, Buddha, the enlightened soul, he attained moksha. What is moksha? Moksha just means that he's free from the entire cycle of birth and death, right? He
Mhm.
does not have to worry about having an incarnation on earth again, taking rebirth. I think that's as far as a human's life is concerned. I think that's the ultimate goal, to attain moksha and be free from life and death. But where do you go beyond that? Yeah, like you mentioned, beyond that, I think it would just be to end the entire civilization and just to give it a fresh new start. Uh, just to wipe out the entire civilization and just start all new. Just start afresh with the Saptarishis and the Chiranjeevis. The Chiranjeevis, again, open to speculation whether they go through the Kali Yuga and they survive the attack of Kali, and they go through into the new age. Of course, it's all open to speculation, but yeah, I do have to lean in on the point that it might be something beyond that's human, and Kalki is the one that's going to be riding the white horse. Of course, described in the Kalki Purana, he's going to be a super soul who's going to be riding a white horse, and he's going to have a sword in his hand as his primary weapon. And yeah,
I'm
that's
holding
how.
Kalki Purana right now in my hand, but I still can't make heads or tails because there's so much to learn. I haven't even started reading this book yet, though. I just have a summary book of Kalki Purana I'm holding right, and whatever you're describing, I'm seeing a white horse, and they've had some
Yeah,
kind of metallic objects on the horse, and there's fire coming out of those metallic objects. And somewhere
yeah.
I see like, okay, this is definitely futuristic, though.
Definitely, it does sound a lot more futuristic than what we have right now. And I'm gonna lean in on the point that it's much more far advanced than a human's life. And I would even say that it does not even takes place on Bhuloka. It might even be another transcendental plane that this whole battle takes place. And we're going to be the collateral damage where the yuga ends and the cycle of the entire Mahayuga ends with us, and there's a fresh new life in the next Mahayuga where the Satyuga takes place and human civilization starts afresh. and everything just happens from the beginning again.
In a way, it kind of makes sense rather than see if you look at other religious concepts as well. Some put it against 6,000 years, some put it less than that or more than that.
Hmm.
And the concept which confuses me is if the world is only 6,000 years old, then what was God's plan before, right? And I
Yeah.
couldn't get a proper answer from any other, religious beliefs because it pretty much says it's 6,000 years or something of that sort. And
Hmm.
from now it when it starts, which means God only existed somewhere during that period of time, right? But if you say something like, no, this is a concept which is going ongoing event, it's been
Hmm.
happened multiple times, it gives a better understanding. Okay, so which means God is not finite over here, right? So
Yeah.
and God's duration is not finite as well, which means God's been there for longer time, and we are nothing but playthings in a way that we are someone
Mhm.
who just plays a minor role in a major scheme of things, and it's an ongoing thing. And I might have taken different forms at different times, or maybe this is my first form. You never know. And I always felt, if you look at the concept of karma, right? I've always
Yeah.
felt that is my understanding. Humans, if you are born as a human, which means you have done really good in your previous life, because I think humans are the last step to achieve moksha, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah, humans are the last step towards achieving moksha because in order to be a human, you have to cross 84,000 lifetimes as lesser intelligent beings, as in beings that are not particularly on top of the food chain and not
Mhm.
supremely intelligent enough to understand what God is telling us and what's the purpose of our life. Us being a human, being born as a human, is an incredible luck factor that comes to play with it, wherein 80, over 84,000 lifetimes being born as lesser beings. I'm not saying lesser beings as in beings who are inferior to us. I'm saying lesser beings as in beings who are smaller than us, or not particularly smaller, but having lesser intelligence than us to perceive reality. So,
Mhm.
being born as a human, you are granted the ability to understand what God is saying and understand the purpose of life as to why we are born, what's the purpose of life. And according to me, the entire purpose of life is, according to Bhagavad Gita, to serve Krishna. And we are continuously stuck in this whole loop of birth and rebirth and death. And the only way to get freed from all of that and to continue on to the above 14, the above 7 lokas, the six above other lokas above us, it is to surrender ourselves to Krishna and in order to go ahead and attain moksha, to be freed from this whole life and birth cycle.
Interesting. So, if that's the case, this could be our last. Even any of this is Kali Yuga, but
Yeah.
if it's not, this could be our last incarnation. But I'm nowhere close to attaining moksha, I guess, though, which means I might have to take a different form as a human again. But yeah, I doubt I'm anywhere close to attaining moksha at this point. I hardly have
Yeah.
any that kind of knowledge for say. But that's one brings me to another question. If you take Lord Rama, right, he's known as Maryada
Hmm.
Purushottam, right?
Yeah.
But Krishna
Hmm.
has a name called Purna Purushottam, the complete Purushottam,
Yeah.
right?
So.
And yeah, so I was just watching this discussion, and this person says that he's a Purna Purushottam because even though Lord Rama was all about righteousness and dharma, he did go through a
Mhm.
lot, and he had to suffer, and that worked for his time. But yet, even during his time, he had to suffer. But
Yeah.
during when Lord Krishna comes in, things are already
Hmm.
horrible. As in, the state of human mind was horrible, and Krishna did
Hmm.
not just follow the only the right things or the dharmic things or that way. He did cut corners here and there, because to
Yeah.
him, in a way, as long as you're in the name of dharma, you can bend certain rules. Is what Krishna kind of put across, which is the modern way to live. Now the question
Yeah.
arises is like, is he suggesting for the current human being, for us, what is the right
Hmm.
way to live? Because if you have, maybe you would have noticed, you are, an adult, you worked in companies, you've seen people, right?
Hmm.
Some of the most
Yeah.
horrible people would have had really
Hmm.
good time. Like for example, take Ramayana and Mahabharata. Horrible, like Lord Rama had to go through all the trouble, 14 years of exile and all those things, and then his wife
Hmm.
was kidnapped, and then he had to go through a war and all of this. But on the other hand, Ravana was having a peaceful life. During his entire tenure, he had a peaceful life. right? Even though everything about him was perfect until he died at the last minute. And same
Yeah.
thing, Duryodhana, the Kauravas, the Pandavas went through a whole lot of trouble. These are the good guys, by the way, and Krishna
Yeah.
was with the good guys. But the
Mm-hmm.
Kauravas, they had a really good time until the end, the last death. They had a perfect lifestyle, and the
Yeah.
same thing follows even now. You see most stories, real life or other stories you hear across, like Hitler or anyone for that matter as well, right? All of these guys
Mm-hmm.
had really nice time, but the people who are the good people, like the Jews, for example, right, they went through a lot as well. Jews still go through a lot. Apparently, that's one community which always takes heat from everyone else, right? And they
Yeah.
still go through a lot. And the good guys are still getting punished for everything, but the bad guys still succeeding in a way. They're living a happy life. The question
Mm-hmm.
is it good to be bad or is it bad to be good at this point? What is the right way to live? That's one thing which I'm not able to understand, because if I have to choose a Maryada Purushottam style, which
Mm-hmm.
if I try in terms of righteousness, I know people are going
Mm-hmm.
to walk over me every given chance. But if I have to take the Purna Purushottam style, which is I am good, but maybe I'll have to be a little bit of devious as well. Because if you look at Lord Krishna, he's also known as he's called a deceiver as well, right? So if that's the case, what is the right way to live? What method should we choose as correct human beings? What method should we choose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me get into the concept of the Purna Purushottam. Let me just explain that. So the whole concept of Purna Purushottam, the complete man, being that they have to consider Krishna as the complete enjoyer of the entire material world. So Krishna, he is the supreme being, as we all know. He is the Brahman, the supreme soul that governs the entire universe. And he is the only masculine aspect of the entire material and spiritual world. Like I explained before, the
Hmm.
material world is one fourth, and the spiritual world is three fourths of the entire existence. And Krishna is the only masculine being. We are all feminine. I know this is going to trigger a lot of people, but the truth is that we are all feminine witnesses of Ras Leela. Ras Leela is what Krishna does. Krishna along with his Gopikas threes. He
Hmm.
does the Ras Leela, and we are just enjoyers of that Ras Leela. Of course, to enjoy this Ras Leela, you're supposed to go to Goloka, which is where Krishna and Radha reside. I know this all sounds a bit strange to some people, but yeah, Krishna is the only masculine soul, the supreme enjoyer of everything, and that's the reason why only he is known as the Purna Purushottam. And regarding the entire premise of Krishna having to cut corners and chal kapat is what we say that Krishna did. He does chal along with people. Chal meaning he kind of uh, cheats people into establishing dharma. So that's essentially what he did in the entire Mahabharat story narrative. He established that it's okay if you have to establish dharma, you have to cut corners in one way or the other. Because if you're gonna lead a life like Lord Ram, you're gonna get walked over all the time in this Kali Yuga. And is it bad to be good or is it good to be bad? I would say that it's sometimes good to be bad. In most of the times in the Kali Yuga that we live in, it's sometimes good to be bad. We have to cut corners in order to be able to prevent people from walking over us. And this is some advice that I'm trying to take for myself. And I think everyone should not completely just cut corners all the way through. But yeah, I do believe that it's okay sometimes if you are supposed to cut corners and reach the destination. But the ultimate goal has to be establishing dharma, and it has to be for a good cause. And that's the entire premise, the entire reason why you're supposed to do it. If any other reason, then yes, it's completely wrong.
Yeah, so I do the same thing as well. Though, if it has to be in name of dharma, and it's not again self satisfactory or self beneficial kind of thing as well, right? So what Krishna does over here, even though he does certain things, there's a famous movie, Tamil movie back in time, where when the Kurukshetra war ends, not the war doesn't end during that time.
Hmm.
Karna's battle happens, right? When how Karna was defeated, That is
Yeah.
where people always question it, that that's the way he killed Karna. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to similar, Lord Rama did the same thing to Vali as well. But the explanation, let me start with Vali first. So
Mm-hmm.
Lord Rama kills Vali. The people always said that why did Lord Rama had to hide behind a tree to kill him? Because some assume because if Lord Rama had to come appear in front of him, and Vali had the ability to steal their power, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
would be difficult for him to kill. But Lord Rama's explanation was different. So he said this person, so for a brother, for an elder brother, and younger brother is
Mm-hmm.
like a son, and
Yeah.
for someone to misbehave with his wife, a son, his younger brother's wife, is like someone who's
Mm-hmm.
misbehaved with his own daughter-in-law. That kind of person does not require any kind of morality or any kind of dharma, to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Plus another story also, if Lord Rama had to kill Vali, he'll attain moksha. That's how when God kills someone, they attain moksha, right?
Yeah.
Because when they see them, that's when they attain moksha. However, from this
Mm-hmm.
way, Lord Rama also stopped him from attaining moksha because, in a way, what Vali did was beyond, beyond bad. Because this was in a way adharma as far as possible. Because to Lord Rama, misbehaving with the brother's wife is like misbehaving with his daughter-in-law. And that is not acceptable. That's the reason he chose to opt that one. And same thing in Karna. I've noticed that somewhere movies have shown Karna to be the really good hero and Arjuna to be the bad person. And
Yeah.
I kind of that is how we also grew up, right? And as later
Mm-hmm.
when you start getting into certain things, somewhere the story changes because Karna is not a hero as what people claim him to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in the way they portrayed him to be. And Arjuna is
Mm-hmm.
not as bad as what they portray him to be as well. Because if Arjuna was as bad as what he is, then Lord Krishna wouldn't be with Arjuna, he would have been with Karna,
Yeah.
right? That
Exactly.
argument also falls apart. And that movie, there's an interesting discussion when Arjuna defeats him, and then when he couldn't die, and then how he had to go there and deceive him, and he had
Mm-hmm.
to, take the blessings of whatever dharma he had done, right? So he took all those
Mm-hmm.
blessings, and that is what killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when people start addressing him as someone who's a deceiver because he took a form to deceive and he had to destroy. But in a way, his answer is also correct because there is no way Karna could die because there's a statement which says dharmam talaikak, which means as long as you've done good things, that will protect you, right? And if it's protecting you, which means you
Mm-hmm.
can't die, you will remain in that state where you are stuck with arrows and in the battlefield, and you're not able to die, nor are you able to recover because again, the arrows are not the weapons which I mentioned are not regular ones either, right? So in a way,
Mm-hmm.
Karna also got moksha because that's exactly what he asked for, and that's exactly what he got as well. He got moksha from the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That was a gift
Yeah.
which came in a different form.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I do completely agree with you. People who are killed by God, they attain moksha. The entire population that took place in the Kurukshetra war, all every single soul attained moksha because Krishna was the person who was in that war, and yeah, every single soul attained moksha, and it's also mentioned in such a way that no single soul is stuck because they followed dharma or the adharma. Every single one got moksha. And when you mentioned Karna, I got another thought in my mind. There's two types of loyalty. There's blind loyalty and there's loyalty towards dharma. Loyalty towards dharma is what the Pandavas followed. The entire side of Pandavas, they followed dharma. They were loyal to dharma, even though they had to face their own family, their own flesh and blood, their uncle, their brothers,
The
so many
teacher,
people from, yeah, yeah, their teacher as well. That's the most important thing. They had to face people whom they were attached to emotionally. Because they had to do this because they were being loyal to dharma. Now Karna is a special case because he was blindly loyal. The Angaraj was loyal only to Duryodhana. Because Duryodhana made him a king, he gave him Karna gained an identity because Duryodhana became his friend. That's where Karna chose to show his loyalty. He was not the friend who stopped Duryodhana when Duryodhana was obviously following adharma and insulting the wife of the Pandavas. Even Karna went a step above, and he also insulted the wife of the Pandavas, Panchali, he insulted her as well, saying that she is a woman who has had relations with five men. How can she respect herself? He said these things specifically to Panchali, and that's where you draw the line. That's where you sort of like draw the difference between dharma and adharma, and you decide as to who deserves to die and who deserves to live. And that's the ultimate decision of Krishna. And he had to make that decision as to if this person deserves to attain moksha and death, or if he deserves to be stuck on this plane, or stuck in this dimension with his soul not attaining moksha, and ultimately being suspended between two worlds, not being able to die and not being able to live. So that's the supreme decision of the Lord himself. So whatever decision he made was obviously the right one. And I think that's where I would like to keep my point.
Yeah, I agree as well, though. In terms of dharma, whatever is required to uphold dharma, that is required.
Hmm.
That is required to be done, and that's exactly what was done. Now, when we had a discussion earlier, the same thing applies to us as well. If it's in the name of righteousness, and so if, what we typically tend to do is we don't speak out, like just like Karna, as you mentioned, you see something wrong. When you don't
Yeah.
speak out, when you don't do something about it, you're essentially
Hmm.
upholding adharma. You're promoting adharma at this
Yeah.
point, right? But if
Yeah.
you had to take some action, right, some action,
Hmm.
even though the action is not the most noble. For example, people consider noble things to be like, the very brave, extensive thing, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
certain things which are not really noble could also be the right way to do it. For example, what Krishna would have done, right? And this is again in terms of upholding dharma. The most popular
Hmm.
ones which you could see is like when there are any victims in an organization or anything of that sort, right? People
Hmm.
always describe it as someone called the whistleblowers. They always say like, "No, that's not a nice way. If you want, they could probably speak out directly." But there are consequences to that as well. So most companies do promote whistleblowing because uh, that's one way of upholding certain things. If at all there is a sexual harassment case, you don't have to be the person, the victim over here. You could be another person. You could still point
Yeah.
it out, right? And when the law
It's all
does the
about
same thing as well.
stopping. Yeah. It's all about
Correct.
stopping adharma.
Exactly. So you don't have to just go beat up the person who is harassing a person or racial discriminating a person. That's not the only way to get things done. There are other means as well.
Hmm.
That's what Krishna tries to tell us as well. It's not just go to war and destroy people. There are multiple ways to get the job done, as long as it's not in your interest, a self-interest to grow, but it's in a greater good. Then it's fine.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, do we follow that? Sometimes we think the most honorary way or the most honorable way to live is to be the righteous and everything. And I
Hmm.
have tried that form. I'll be very frank. I've tried and it doesn't really work for me though. As in, uh, the more good you are, the weird things get for you because you tend to be shunned. You tend to be disliked because you may come out as rude. You may come out as arrogant. You may come out as people not likable character. These are the common things that people might find, right? And
Yeah.
as life of Krishna, if you take that form, it makes more
Hmm.
sense because you do see what's realistic at the same time you do play a role. And if you be just like Lord Rama is, and at this current day and age, people are going to walk over you. Like, and
Yeah.
there's no question about it. They would just make you a carpet and just walk. And sometimes you have to, if you don't put a stop to it, that will continue. Someone has to put a stop to it, and it has to be you. No one else is going to do it for you.
Exactly. I do completely agree on that point. If you are not uh, a person who is willing to cut corners, people are eventually gonna walk over you. Krishna is a much practical person. He knows when to cut corners, and he knows when he's supposed to be righteous. Take Babrik for example. He's famously known as Khatu Sham now. The story of Babrik. Many people know the story of how Babrik went about. He was a great warrior. He was the son of Ghatotkacha, I believe. I'm
Mhm,
not going to
mhm.
go into the entire narrative of Babrik, but yeah, to keep things short, Babrik was such a great warrior that he could finish the entire Mahabharat war just with three arrows out of his quiver. Just
Correct.
three
Yeah.
arrows would be enough to wipe out the entire army. And he just made the claim that it's not a claim, it's just a promise, sort of like a promise, that whichever
More of a
side,
demonstration that he just demonstrated what weapons
yeah,
he has and how it works.
Yeah, and also he made a sort of a promise that whichever side is the weaker side, I'm going to be a part of that side so that things are going to be equaled out. And he knew, Krishna at this point knew that Kaurava's side is the weaker side, and even Krishna knew that Babrik knew that Kauravas is the weaker side. And if Kaurava was to take place in the, I'm sorry, if Babrik was to take place in the war, the entire Pandava army would have been wiped out without a trace of any single soul within that part. And he did not want this to happen. Krishna wanted the war to occur so that the entire course of dharma could be upheld and adharma could be wiped out. There's no point in ending the entire war in a minute. And what Krishna did with Babrik, many people say that it's wrong. What Krishna essentially did was Krishna, when he knew that Babrik could be a threat to the entire war and it could all be over within a minute if he wills to, Krishna just took him to a place and he just showed him a tree, a very large tree. I believe it was a banyan tree or a peepal tree, but I'm not really sure about that. But yeah, he just pointed out a tree and he told Babrik that he, Babrik being such a great warrior, in order to prove himself to Krishna, he is supposed to make a hole in each and every single leaf of that tree, and only then will Krishna be able to accept that Babrik is such a great warrior. And I'm gonna cut the story short. Krishna
Hmm.
essentially just took a leaf from the entire tree, and he just put a leaf under his foot, as in he just stood over that leaf, so that Barbarik would not be ultimately able to make a hole in every single leaf. And at the end of the story, Barbarik failed because Krishna cheated Barbaric in a way that he was not able to prove himself, that only one leaf was left out of all of the out of all of the leaves of the tree. Only one leaf was left out, which was under Krishna's foot. And after this, I'm gonna cut the story short, and I'm gonna say that Krishna ultimately ended up uh, taking the head, as in it was not Krishna who cut off the head of Babrik, it was Babrik who himself cut his head out, and he gave it to Krishna, and then Krishna ultimately he took the head of Babrik and he suspended it on top of a mountain so that Babrik's wish of watching the entire Mahabharata came true. And yeah, essentially this is what took place. Now you look at that story and you say that no, it was not completely fair against Babrik. Babrik was cheated out of the entire challenge that was made by Lord Krishna. But you look at the other side of the coin and you see that it was necessary for that to happen, because if Babrik was on the side of the weaker side of the war, the entire war would have been over within a minute, and the entire purpose of Mahabharat would have never taken place. So this is an example of how it's not really necessary that good things happen to good people, and it's sometimes unfair things do happen to good people as well. And yeah, sometimes you do have to cut corners in order to save yourself from the misery of being a good person.
Yes, sir. That's one thing which I would want to start following as well. Being extremely good is not really going to help you. There'll be an advice to anyone who's watching for that matter, right? And
Yeah.
there has to be, I think, whenever there is the whole epic of Ramayana and Mahabharata talks about wars per se, right? It talks about wars and how to defend yourself more or less, right? And it talks about righteous battles. So,
Yeah.
in a way, it also symbolizes every individual will have to go their own righteous battle every now and then. As long as they are righteous, you'll have, and that's what exactly Bhagavad Gita says as well. You will have to
Hmm.
fight your battles. There is no way you can run away from it. You have to fight, right?
Yeah.
And
it
that's pretty much
it
what you get from Bhagavad Gita or Lord Krishna, I
it
guess.
yeah, it essentially says that it's okay to, as if you follow Krishna, it's okay to cut corners as long as you're surrendering yourself and your actions to Lord Krishna. It's not that you're supposed to cut corners, that you're doing it for your own good or your own greed. It's not as simple as that. As long as all of your actions and all of your devotion is towards Krishna, then yes, you will be on the side of dharma. And try not to do bad things to others, but if you have to cut corners, then yes, I do believe that in this Kali Yuga, where adharma is the most prominent form of dharma, then yes, you ultimately are forced to cut corners and you are forced to be the bad person in someone's story, if not your own.
Yes, sir. On the topic of Mahabharata, so we had this discussion initially, right? Hanuman sticker. Why do we have Hanuman stickers on vehicles
Yeah.
these days? So again, that goes back to Mahabharata. So post the war,
Hmm.
Krishna asked Hanuman to get down from the chariot, and Hanuman was in the form of a flag, and he comes
Yeah.
down, and the chariot disintegrates completely, and
Hmm.
Arjun asked like, why was he there and something of that sort, and he says he was the one protecting it because the astras which were used were celestial weapons. Without his
Hmm.
protection, the chariot or none of you would have lasted until you did. So,
Yeah.
which is the reason Hanuman was the person who was on the flag protecting the entire Vahana, entire chariot at that point of time. And that tradition was carried forward because I kind of found this out later on at some point. Where is this idea of sticker coming from? And it goes back. This is what Arjuna's chariot, Arjuna's weapon again, not weapon, sorry, vehicle had it, and all the vehicles post that had a similar thing in a hope that Lord Hanuman will protect you just the way that he protected Arjuna's chariot, right? That's a belief system,
Yeah.
and because it's not right. It's not just coincidence. Every vehicle would have either you see a Hanuman sticker or a Hanuman hanging. If you look at those cars, right, you have the orange color
Hmm.
Hanuman hanging at the front mirror, right? There's always
Yeah.
Lord Hanuman there. So there's no one. 99% of in Hindus in India would have Lord Hanuman.
Hmm.
Some would have the Adi Yogi from Isha on their
Yeah.
dashboard, but most of them would have Lord Hanuman sticker at the front or back. That would definitely be there. And the sentiment behind it is this: that is, Lord Hanuman protected that chariot, and in hopes that he will protect my vehicle and me along with it. That's an interesting tradition which has been carried forward for all these years.
Yeah, and also one more reason why we most of the people just go towards Hanuman because Hanuman is sort of both. He is a god that we can worship to, and he is also a devotee of the god that we also worship. He's a supreme devotee of Lord Hanuman. So being a
For
devotee
travel.
himself, people, yeah, being a devotee himself, people find him much more relatable and much more approachable. And also being a Chiranjeevi, being a person, being a being that lives on planet Earth on Bhuloka, he's like you stated earlier, he is said to respond much quicker to our prayers, and his main domain is to protect beings when in need, and they just chant out his name or Lord Ram's name. Hanuman is the primary person who first responds and comes to your protection. So that's the main belief where the stickers of Lord Hanuman comes, so that people have a confidence that Hanuman is the one that's protecting us, and most of the cases it is true. Hanuman is a sort of the person who is protecting most of us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an understandable thing because most people do believe the same thing as well. Right? Hanuman is the god that most people rely on as well, because as you mentioned, he's on Bhuloka, and
Yeah,
I've heard he comes to your rescue quickly. And he's not just
yeah.
someone who's worshipped for strength; he's also someone who's worshipped for knowledge as well. Not predominantly known by most people, but yeah, he's someone
Hmm.
who's also worshipped for his knowledge. And even if you read the Hanuman Chalisa, right, there is Joya Pada Hanuman Chalisa Hoya Siddha Sakti Kauri Sar, right? So it talks about how wealthy you could be with knowledge wise if you're a
Hmm.
devotee of Hanuman. And it's also advised that if you are taking an exam of some sort, if you are
Hmm.
someone who practices Hanuman Chalisa, wakes up and reads Hanuman Chalisa every single day, couple of days, if you do that, your
Hmm.
results would be better. Again, this could be a religious belief, or it could be a discipline. And for the matter, you wake up and you have a discipline which elevates your education or your concentration power. Either which ways, the outcome is that it works.
Yeah, that's the main point. He's sort of like the Superman for us, and the one who protects everything and
The
everyone.
original Superman,
Yeah, the
the
original
original
Superman.
Superman.
The original Superman, and yeah, he's a tremendous practitioner of. He gains tremendous knowledge throughout his lifetime, and tremendous practitioner of whatever he has learned. and the Ashtasiddhis, like you mentioned, he has the Ashtasiddhis, Anima, Garima, and six other siddhis, wherein he can just alter his molecular structure in such a way that almost seems like magic, and I do believe that it is at some point a magical kind of thing. And yeah, he is the supreme responder to all our prayers, I believe.
Yes, sir. So I think we just want to, we've always covered everything we wanted to. I think we moved a little bit away from Ramayana. We went towards Mahabharata as well, but it couldn't be avoided because
Yeah,
conversations were pulling us that side. So there's no one to be blamed here because they're interesting topics. What can you do? Like, these are interesting topics. We can't avoid them. But
exactly.
just to end it with Ramayana itself, there's one thing which I wanted to talk about, right? Which is Ravana
Hmm.
himself, right? Ravana,
Yeah.
if we go back, right? It's not
Hmm.
some, again, I have to go back to Vishnu Purana somewhere over there. Who is
Hmm.
Ravana? Who is Hiranyakashipu? Now, if you look at all of these things, and
Hmm.
again, he gets moksha, Ravana, by the way, because he's killed by Lord Rama himself, right? He's not
Hmm.
succumbed to the life and death creation of chaos. He is not a
Hmm.
regular asura or a rakshasa.
Yeah.
Correct? If you go back to the
Yeah.
Purana, it says Jaya and Vijaya were actually Vishnu's protectors, not protectors, like gatekeepers,
Yeah.
right? Bodyguards. But due to some curse which the rishis give them, I think those Sapta rishis were not mistaken, I guess, though, right?
Yeah.
Now, when they were cursed, they were given a choice. Either you could have 3 lifetimes as my enemy or 100
Hmm.
lifetimes as my devotees. They both chose 3 lifetimes as their enemies, and they get destroyed by
Yeah.
their own god. And that's exactly the last form of Jayan Vijaya was Ravana. I think Ravana and Vibhishana, or is it? I'm not sure who the
No, no.
second was.
It's Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and before that it
Kumbhakarna.
was I believe it was
Hiranyakashipu,
Dantavakra,
Hiranyakash,
Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, and before that it was Dantavakra and Shishupala.
Shishupala. Yeah. So
Yeah.
essentially these were not people who were, in a way, if you look at Hinduism, right, there is no one overpowering gods. It's all gods playing their games in a way. it's
Hmm.
it's all laid out in a way. It's like, the inception kind of thing, right? It's all
Yeah.
connected. They're all
Hmm.
pre-planned and they're all established in a way. For example, there was once I was looking into one of those books about I think Ganesha's birth, right? Lord Ganesha's birth.
Yeah.
People always simplify it to one particular concept, which is nothing but yeah, he was, what do you call it? He was a person was born. Shiva could identify him, and then his head was cut, and then he was replaced with an elephant's head. Such a
Yeah.
simple way to put it across. Then I
Hmm.
was wondering, this is how I was told as well, because no one gave me the breakdown of these things, right? You only told me the basics, like how I described right now. It
Hmm.
didn't make sense, but we believed it. Then, as I started reading into these things, that's when the plot was kind of different. It's not as simple as this happened to this, and that's why this went. It goes because there is someone called Gajen, the king of the Tuskers, who was a Vishnu devotee in the Sher
Hmm.
Sagar, ocean of milk, and he was
Hmm.
attacked. And then there was a crocodile attack, and the crocodile was probably a Gandharva of sort.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
again, it's again, every character over here happens to be either a character which has been cursed, a character which has been rewarded, and they had to take a
Hmm.
form. And the crocodile was a Gandharva named Huha, someone in the past life, who insulted a
Hmm.
sage and was cursed, stating that he would take form as a crocodile, and that crocodile would be, destroyed, and then he would be released from his form. And that's exactly what happens over here. Gajendra, the king of Tuskers, was a Vishnu devotee who was
Hmm.
attacked by this crocodile. Vishnu comes in, kills the crocodile, and then saves him. And then
Yeah.
that continues forward, where they make a promise to Gajendra that he would
Hmm.
want to be, worshipped, not worshipped, want to be respected. Maybe he was given not a request. He was given a blessing that he will be worshipped someday. So Ganesha was killed due to curse from Kashyapa, where and
Hmm.
that Kashyapa, again, is a story where he says the first animal from the northern region is where
Hmm.
the direction of wisdom is what you would use. And that again goes back to another story. Again, this is tied to another story of Mahadeva Shiva, that he granted
Hmm.
this boon to Gajasura, saying that his head will be forever worshipped, which is what happens to Lord Ganesha. And these are just tying to each other's stories. So it's not just something which, okay, there was a what do you call that, a lord called Lord Shiva, and he went
Mhm.
out. His wife had a child, and he didn't recognize him, so he chopped off his head, and then his wife was angry, and then he got a replacement head. That's how
Yeah.
simple many people say, but it's never this simple.
It is never this simple. It is all a part of Krishna's Ras Leela, as we know, within the material world. All of this is supposed to happen, and it all happens for a reason. And it is all part of a greater purpose as to teach the entire civilization that it is not always good to do certain things. And all of these stories, all of these stories, as in not fictional stories, all of these stories that have happened, a part of our history. Of course, not all of these stories do happen on Bhuloka. They happen on heavenly abodes and hellish
Yeah.
abodes. Yeah, all of these happen for a reason, and it is always to teach society a lesson that this is not the right way to go about handling this sort of a situation. There's a better way of handling this. And what happens if you handle it in a worse way is you get a curse, and then the entire story carries forward and it unfolds. And that's how we get a moral of out of the entire Ras Leela that has happened.
Yes, sir. I agree with that. Though. So these are the interesting things. I think we've covered Ramayana. We have given a synopsis, but again, as we discussed earlier, right, there is so much to cover, and I don't think
Mhm.
so. This session was enough for us to finish it. Maybe part three
Yeah,
is requested. Next week we could have the same thing, and we could do more in-depth discussion of certain stories from Ramayana. I think we discussed some of those stories today. We didn't do justice
yeah.
because we just scraped through the summary of those things. But maybe if
Hmm.
we want to have a more detailed discussion, we could you know tell these stories about how Parashurama and Lord Rama fought, or how he broke the bow of Lord Shiva, which no one else could do, and
Yeah.
where did that bow come from? And there's so many things which we could stay. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. We could end. What do you want to say before we close?
Yeah, Pinaka, the story of Pinaka, that can be discussed. Perhaps we can discuss that in the next part. How it came to be and how Lord Rama came in contact with Pinaka, the bow, Shiva's bow, and how he broke it, and what's the origin of his, and what's the entire link with Pinaka and Parshurama. Parshurama, the entire incident where Pinaka's incident takes place, that's when Parshurama as well meets Rama. I believe that's how the story goes,
Yep.
and we can discuss about that as well.
I heard there is a brother bow as well. There were not one bows, but two powerful bows involved. So
Exactly,
I think
exactly
that's
what I
that's
was
an
looking for.
interesting discussion we should have sometime though. Maybe next week.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We're gonna have that discussion.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think yeah, in that case we can close for today. It was really an interesting discussion. We went through a lot, went through different yugas and the breakdown
Hmm.
of those things, right? I think somewhere too much numbers involved, too much math involved in terms of calculation is another thing.
Yeah,
But bigger picture, we covered good topics in terms of both Ramayana and Mahabharata, and maybe next week we
mhm,
can start dealing in more, in terms of Ramayana, especially the
mhm.
stories which are not commonly heard of, and that will be next
Yeah,
Thursday, same time, 9:30 p.m. IST India.
yep, definitely. I'm gonna be in for that. And let's mix in a little bit of Mahabharata as well in that.
Oh yeah, I'm up for it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, man. Thank you
Yep.
for having
Thank
me.
you for joining, and see you again next week.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.